Richmond played to a shootout draw on Friday, but I was super impressed by the way that Greenville maximized their best players within the 4-2-3-1. You start with careful possession out of the Chapa Herrera, Carlos Anguiano double pivot, forcing Richmond to overextend up the midfield and thereby allowing Anguiano to drive forward and set up his teammates. You're seeing some high to low motion here, with striker Leo Castro dropping in as fellow forward Evan Lee pushes ahead. Meanwhile, the wingers explore. Gion Marsh is able to get a touch, play Castro in, and by the time the Triumph reach the box, that flurry of motion has opened Connor Evans from right back at the far post to score. This is the fluidity that defines Greenville at their best and should set this team up for success in the weeks to come.
Not to take anything away from the tactics show at all, but the goal that was shown, everything was great except for the goal that was shown. Sen made a great save on the initial shot. The second one, I think he saves it if his defender doesn't deflect it into the bottom corner. I think if I'm Sned, I'm furious.
One of those days in net for him where he just couldn't catch a break. But I think overall, we know Richmond can score. We know this is a team that figured it out from the moment they hit the pitch in 2025. Greenville, contrary to what we expected from them, have taken some time to figure things out. They had the promising win against Omaha early in the season. And from there, it's been a lot of what is our identity on the wings? Who is the forward mix we want to go with? Increasingly, what you're seeing from Evan Lee, getting Benzikowski back in that inverted position, the balance feels right. The way they're manipulating their midfield feels a little bit more solid in possession, like cutting out some of the sloppy turnovers. I don't know if they're fully there, and I think the goals they conceded were kind of good examples of defensive disorganization, but I came away heartened by the performance on Friday night from the Triumph.
You mentioned like inverting Sikowski, and I think just that inside out run that he makes on his goal, where it's exactly the sort of position that you want to see Ben Sikowski taking up, and it was I would agree in that Greenville felt very fluid in their fluid moments, and they made the goals for themselves, as you pointed out in the tactics show. So I definitely come away with this as, it's not the end of the world for the Triumph. As far as Richmond, I mean, chaos reigns. Like they just are not able to, we've said it a million times, whatever. I think Alex has said it a handful of times that Richmond's just not able to be involved in a normal game. And it doesn't matter if if the other team is playing up, if the other team is playing down, like whatever the situation, they just always make sure that it's maximum chaos. And Kirkland, not just for Costco anymore,
Jesus Christ.
I mean, this is the 7th game this year against USL opposition that Richmond have been involved in. That's been over 2.5 goals. It's been one of the more reliable kind of wagers you could make on the year. And I was honestly really heartbroken for them because I knew that they had a long winless run against Greenville that is stretched all the way back to August 2022, or 44 months running. And they still couldn't get that 3 points against the Greenville Triumph, which is just another thing that I was taken away from this match.
Kirkland, second straight brace, which is he's turning into the person that preseason was like, hopefully he's all right to, shore up this front four. And he's somehow turned into the best one, as Espinal might have a conversation. But, 2 straight braces will do that. And Chandler O'Dwyer, he's just at the end of every single set piece, even ones that aren't supposed to land to him, like going off of the post and happen to land on his forehead. Like, it just feels like the ball just lands on him. It's really impressive. Richmond is going to score. One thing that Greenville did, and this is not just a Greenville thing, this has been a lot of teams I've noticed. Snedden, I think, is the youngest goalkeeper in the league. And what do teams do when there's a young goalkeeper? You either put the ball on their forehead and see if they make a mistake, or you put it a little just out of reach, put it a little farther to the back post, put it on the 6, make them make a decision, see if they come out and try to claim it. And it happened a few times where Greenville put a ball towards the back post. They put something towards the top of the 6, force him to make a decision, force him to try to punch the ball or retreat to his line. And he did really good job for the most part. And then you get the last goal of the game, which makes it 3-3, where he can't really claim that ball, but he does come out for just a little bit, then retreat. He's slightly out of position and ends up kind of biting them in the tail, right? It sucks, but he is still a young goalkeeper that in a few years he won't make those little mistakes, or he goes out there and claims it and has a little bit more bravery to him, but it's not too far away. That's something interesting. John, you had mentioned the kind of disorganization of Greenville, and they made a decision that I completely disagreed with that I don't know. I would love to get yours or anybody else's thoughts, where they kind of played Evan Lee as this like high presser and kind of playing at the 10. And I think he should be more of a solo 6, basically. They lose so much defensive stability because they have 3 guys that just kind of press everywhere and no one stays home. No one stays home and provides any stability. And almost all the chances that they give up is because somebody's coming from somewhere else. Oftentimes it's Tyler Pollock dropping into the middle, tucking in to cover up space that other people have deserted. You don't want to move Chapo Herrera. You don't force him just to be a 6. Feels like Evan Lee should be the guy.
There was another sequence, a handful of sequences where Chapa and Anguiano were really sitting in and doing classic double pivot things in possession. Not only did that set them up better to do what they do best offensively, but it gave Greenville more of a resting structure. So they had those 2 players where they wanted them to be. That needs to be the path forward, because I actually loved what Evan Lee was providing offensively in that higher position. I think he's such a smart mover. He knows how to make runs off of Leo Castro, as we saw time and again. Ultimately, it's probably a Rapapa Mensah, Leo Castro front line, and Lee drops into the midfield, and this is an academic debate. But having that in your back pocket is huge. Watching back some of those goals, I think a lot of the blame falls on Ivan Iguakwa. He is a rookie player coming out of Furman. Ton of talent, ton of versatility. Something about the communication was just off. And I'm thinking about like Kirkland squeaking past him minutes into the game. That's a play where maybe a more veteran player with a better understanding with those teammates gets the job done. So I think you're right to point out the shift is meaningful and it probably destabilizes Greenville in certain ways. But I see the balance that Rick Wright is trying to strike even so.
You mentioned Ngakwa, by the way. He obviously gets the game drawing goal. They also had a set piece earlier that I highlighted at one point where they just do really interesting things off of the ball on set pieces. And Hartford did it later or earlier. No, the next day versus Charleston, where they put everybody on the line and then they just rush them off the 6 and just go everywhere except for the back post, and ends up being Scarlett's goal for Hartford. I know we're getting way ahead, but Agagwa is the guy who was making the run to the back post at a better cross in. Like there was legitimately no one within 3-4 yards of him. And it's a wide open goal if it's a slightly better service. That's a new trend kind of happening tactically right now of set pieces, put them on the line, run them to the top of the 6, see who follows, see who goes with, because there's been free runners everywhere on the back post because of it. And that's a trend that people should be watching. Cool. Any final thoughts on this match? All right. Texoma, baby, you were so close. You were so close. You open up with a banger of a free kick, and it all just goes well. And then last minutes of the game, you concede a penalty, and it is 4-3 to the Independents. We should celebrate the Independents, but I just more or less feel sad for the Double Birds.
They they can't catch a break. I mean, they've actually done okay recently. Like they held Locomotive, in the Jaeger to a penalty loss. And then in this game, I mean, Independents are a better team than them. Like it's just, this is the crux of the issue, is they just are always the worst team of every game that they play in. Like there's no game where they are the better team. And so they're always going to rely on some kind of like something crazy to happen to go their way to like get big results. And it felt like maybe they would just like eke this one out, and for it to go down the way it did in stoppage time it's a heartbreaker for Texoma, when it felt like they maybe had just done enough to eke out a draw here.
I think from the Texoma angle, you love that you scored 3 times. You love that Adjamir Spengler is doing his thing and really kind of living up to the potential we saw as a rookie. They gave up 3.1 XG, and they let Luis Alvarez and Alfredo Medense take 132 touches in this game. That is not a winning formula when you're playing the Charlotte Independents. And obviously, the first goal is Alvarez slipping Medense in to get the assist. Alvarez does his thing with the swaggiest of Panenkas at the end of this game. The results makes it look closer than the match probably was if you replay it 10 times. But I think that's how Texoma is going to have to get results. They're going to have to finish above their level, maybe get lucky. Didn't happen here against a Charlotte team that has a process. But hey, the Texoma is better than we maybe were talking about them earlier in the season. So that's something.
Yeah, I mean, I felt like scoring 3 goals in this one kind of showed that, like, in the grand scheme of how Texoma's season has gone, they're turning a corner on their own front. Like, they are still, like, a bad team, and they're still struggling. Like, if you look at their next 4 games, it's AV Alta, Omaha, Triumph, and Richmond. There's at least a few teams in there that they could pull into very high-scoring affairs. But, yeah, this is still a very difficult team right now who has led matches this year and less time than the How to Train Your Dragon run time. 83 minutes. That's all that they've led matches for. How to Train Your Dragon is 10 minutes longer than that. But I learned my lesson with Brooklyn FC in the spring of to avoid wagering on this, because I just know at some point something is going to break and they're going to turn a corner. Like Southampton isn't going to be the worst team in Premier League history. At some point, something is going to break their way.
Much like How to Train Your Dragon, Texoma is pretty toothless.
Got him.
Yeah.
Was it? I'm trying to think now. Was it against Westchester that they got like a super early goal, and it was actually really pretty? Like they worked through like their lines, and they passed it across. And
I think it might have been
McManus.
Yeah, McManus. Yeah, 4th minute.
Okay.
The bulk of their leading.
That was a part that we saw what could be. And you, John, you mentioned that they might not be as bad as we thought. We've seen flashes. We've seen shimmers of it can be okay. Like the set piece goal, the free kick goal to start this match. Stunning goal. There are shimmers of goodness. And then it just kind of falls apart. I don't know. I just feel bad at this point. It makes me a little sad. This is not like a Fuego situation where there was 0 redeeming qualities other than 2 players. There are genuinely good moments for them, but it's just sad.
It's weird to see Solomon Asante playing for a team that's absolutely dire in League One. I will say that.
Yeah, it is. It's weird.
And in an expansion season, it's just kind of tough to really kind of build a fan base and generate interest if you're starting out kind of this poorly, which is a shame, because from the matches I've watched, and I've actually watched quite a bit of Texoma, I found myself tuning in and wanting to be there for when they get that win. And it's their stadium's it seems like a very cozy ground to see a match in.
Yeah. You mentioned the Luis Alvarez, not the Mets catcher. But you mentioned the Panenka at the very end. Can I tell y'all, I fear every time I see someone attempt a Panenka, all I can think is Quayshow in the USL Championship final a couple years ago.
Classic.
After seeing how poorly it can go, I just don't know why you would ever do it.
There was a while back on old Twitter when I was it was like Panenka's gone wrong or whatever, and it was because there are some truly horrendous ones. Like if you go back over the last probably 10 years, there's some brutal ones where the keeper doesn't even move, it just catches it, just rolls it back out. It's brutal.
I want to just kind of open the floor with a little bit of League One, where John, your back four article mentioned it, but I also thought it to myself when I watched it live. The Powder goal, I audibly said "ew." I don't make sounds when I see a goal very often, and that one got an audible response.
Dude, the hit on that, the way it goes bar down, unreal stuff from Samori Powder. And Westchester, another team that's figuring things out, but Powder has been a breakout player, fast as lightning. To see him do what he did in this game, that's nasty, and it should be goal of the week.
Any other open floors?
Quick shout out to our friends at Hearts of Pine real quick, who go down early against Knoxville, really getting their teeth kicked in for the first 10 minutes. And then they figure it out. They dominate the rest of the game. Masashi Wada is the truth. They just let that guy drift and do what he wants. And he is so clever in the way he moves, really a technical piece as well. He's going to get them a lot of points. And by the way, great crowd in Portland. Love to see them at Fitzpatrick Stadium doing good things.
I have a question for the group before are we all going to have to take oyster shots for our live show?
I mean,
oyster Jägermeister shots.
Isn't that required at the to enter the state?
Yeah, it's actually a law.
On Wada and Liati might be two of the hardest working forwards in League One. They're involved in everything, and I think Liati ends up winning 16 duels or something like that. So yeah, it's a very I would say Hearts of Pine are again a team figuring it out at the beginning of their expansion season. I think better things are definitely ahead for them, and this is a very good performance against One Knox.